When you're putting your garden to bed for the off-season, consider planting a cover crop. It's pretty much as easy as sprinkling some seeds around and walking away. The cover crop will do the rest, protecting your soil all winter long. Mulch can provide some of the same benefits. But not only do cover crops protect your soil against compaction, erosion, moisture loss, temperature extremes, and the invasions of weeds like mulch does, they have several additional benefits. They're a living mulch that, among other things, actively captures nutrients that would otherwise leach away, and especially in the case of legumes, builds even more nutrients in their tissues, naturally loosens your soil, increases water holding capacity, and if you let them grow a little in the spring, provides you with homegrown mulch for other areas and a large volume of homegrown organic matter for your compost piles. But how do you grow cover crops? What are some good cover crops to grow, and are there ways to ensure they're a little more successful than just sprinkling some seeds around and walking away? Hi. I'm Judd Lefebvre with Green Thumb Gardening Secrets website and YouTube channel, which are dedicated to helping you grow your own food and experience all the other wonderful joys of gardening. And their message is that everyone can garden, especially if you're passionate enough to stick with it, but it helps to know what the best gardeners do. So check out my previous videos for ideas to help you have greater success in your garden. Like this video if you like it, and subscribe to get all of my upcoming videos. Thanks. I'm super excited today to teach you about cover crops, because growing cover crops is easy and does wonders for your garden soil over the long term. But how do you do it? And are there any tips or tricks to make it more successful? Your first step is choosing which cover crop to use. There are so many options and mixes that choosing which one is often the hardest part of the process and deserving of a separate video. But like all of cover cropping, it's still pretty easy. To really simplify it, especially if you're just starting out, choose a grass like winter rye, wheat, or annual ryegrass. Winter rye would be my #1 choice if it works in your zone, just because it still germinates well in cooler temperatures and is the absolute best at capturing nutrients, known by cover crop aficionados as nutrient scavenging. I'd also add a legume, probably hairy vetch if it's paired with winter rye, but many legumes grow well with grasses. And possibly even a third cover crop as well if that's what best meets your needs. But again, choosing which cover crop or mix best meets your needs really deserves its own video. Hopefully I'll be able to make one out in the future, but for now, if you want to dig in more, check out the pages I've linked in the description. Once you've chosen your cover crops, you can find their planting rates per 100 or 1,000 square feet, or 10 or 100 square meters, in this table, which I find more user-friendly than the typical listing by acres or hectares, and have linked in the description below. If you don't already know it, you also need to measure your plot and figure its area, but a rough measurement with a little extra added to each dimension will do fine. If you're planting a grass and legume mix, decrease the amount of grass seed by 1/3, and use 1/3 of the suggested legume amount. If you're using a mix of 3 or more, use the fraction of each amount that each cover crop makes up of the whole. So for 3 cover crops, use 1/3 of the poundage given for each. For 4, use 1/4 of the poundage given for each. For most home gardeners, this ends up being a pretty small amount needed for each cover crop, sometimes ridiculously small. You can purchase most cover crop seeds from local stores. Small mom and pop stores that also sell farm and animal keeping products like fencing, feeding and watering containers, or local feed mills are usually your best bet and typically have by far the best prices. You can also get them from most mail order and online garden retailers like Johnny's or others, but their cover crops are usually more expensive per pound, even before adding in shipping costs, and usually can't be purchased in the smaller, idiosyncratic quantities like 3 1/4 pounds that you'll typically need and are easy to get from your local mom and pop stores. Plus, it's a great way to spend money at local businesses that actually meet this need much better than anyone else. It might help to bring cash, however, since the price per pound for the seed is pretty low and the amount of seed most home gardeners eat is usually ridiculously small. Your bill might come to only a few dollars or even less. And I'm always embarrassed paying for just like $2 at a local business with a credit card, since my understanding is that for smaller merchants like this, the cost to process small credit card transactions are a good chunk of what they'd otherwise make from the sale. After you have your seed, it's time to plant. When larger areas like fields are planted to cover crops, the seed is drilled. That is, it's planted into the ground with a planter. But home gardeners typically broadcast their seeds, usually by hand, at higher rates, since broadcasting means fewer seeds end up with the required seed-to-soil contact and hence consistent soil moisture needed for solid germination and successful early growth. All of the amounts given in the table earlier in the video are broadcasting rates for home gardeners. However, even if using broadcasting rates, there are a few methods beyond just sprinkling the seed around and walking away that significantly increase your germination and early growth success. To create the most successful situation, first clear the planting area so it's reasonably bare soil to keep seeds from sitting on top of weeds, mulch, and plant debris above the soil. Then rough up the soil with a bow rake. Usually this is enough, but if your soil is too hard or compacted, like that of this path here, which I'd roughly judge by if it isn't loose enough to easily rake or sticking digging fork into the top 2 to 4 inches or 5 to 10 centimeters of soil, till or use a digging fork or a spade to loosen the top 4 to 6 inches or 10 to 15 centimeters of the soil, and roughly smooth the surface with a bow rake. Then just spread the seed. This can be as simple as tossing it around the area in wide arcing throws with one pass. Getting it evenly spread in one pass, however, can be difficult and often results in a patchy overall result, with clear thin and dense areas. To spread it more evenly, divide the seed into 2 to 4 roughly equal batches, and do a pass over the whole area using a different walking pattern with each batch. Additionally, it helps to plant different kinds of seeds, especially those that are of different sizes, in separate batches and passes. Otherwise, the larger seeds tend to rise and the smaller seeds fall in a natural sifting as the container gets shaken as you walk, and you end up with each more concentrated in certain areas of the garden. Next, and this is probably the most optional of these optional steps, but one I'd still highly recommend if your area isn't too large to make it feasible, chop the seed into the soil with a bow rake. Short chopping motions that pull up a little soil really help the seed settle into the ground and even pull up a bit of soil over the seed, significantly increasing seed to soil contact and hence the cover crop's overall success. Just keep your rake strokes short and mostly into the soil. Long sweeping strokes on top of the soil pull a little soil over the seeds, but also tend to clump seeds where the rake head stops, leading to a patchy cover crop with dense and sparse areas. It can also help to increase seed to soil contact by walking over the area, or in beds with especially loose soil where a footstep would really sink in, using a digging board or the like to pat the soil down. I've found that outside of my beds in the wider areas where I'd plant corn, cucumbers, or the like, if I work my way forward as I chop, so toward my rake, I automatically step on most of the soil I've already chopped. Next, mulch your area with straw, just like you would if planting grass seed. So with a thin covering that lets you see maybe from barely 0 to about a quarter of the soil underneath to help keep moisture around the seeds. Most straw you find nowadays is wheat straw, and for some reason contains a fair number of its own seeds. However, since wheat is another great cover crop, this is one instance where the pesky sprouts that come from your mulch are actually an additional benefit. Finally, anytime the rain isn't doing it for you, water regularly, just enough to make sure the top of the soil, and hence the seeds, stays moist throughout germination and early growth. This is one instance where shallow waterings are fine, and keep this up until the cover crop is well established, so about 6 inches or 15 centimeters tall. That's it. It's really quite easy. Then you can just sit back and let the cover crop do its amazing work all winter long, knowing your garden is protected and building fertility the entire time. This is why growing cover crops on what otherwise would be bare soil during the off-season is one of the best long-term actions you can take for your soil. Plus, just seeing your garden still green and full of life when it otherwise would be bare and devoid of it brings joy and an extra special peace of mind all winter long. But this also leads us to the next big questions. What are the best ways to clear the garden of cover crops to get it ready for planting in the spring? And are there any cover crops that will die naturally over the winter, making getting the garden ready in the spring even easier? But if they die over the winter, are the cover crops still doing their job of protecting and building the soil? Also, if cover crops are so beneficial, are there ones that can fill short-term voids in the garden during the growing season and provide the same and even some wonderful additional benefits? Even better, can you grow cover crops on a rotating fraction of the garden during the growing season to offer a crop rotation that really boosts soil fertility, breaks pest and disease cycles, and adds wanted volume to your homegrown compost operation? And what are the specific cover crops and special practices that work best for each of those options? Those are all excellent questions, and I'll answer each one in upcoming videos. So tune in next time, subscribe to get all my future content, and leave questions or comments below. I personally answer each one. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I hope you always stay open to growing.